Now call Deputy Tommy Broughan.
Thanks, Laskin Corla. I'm delighted to have the opportunity today to contribute to this debate, and I want to warmly commend Deputy Eamon Maloney's initiative in bringing forward this much-needed bill. I think it's very typical of Deputy Maloney's very original and thoughtful contributions to this House. I firmly agree with the core element of the bill. That's the establishment of the Cemeteries Regulator. I also proposed this, of course, Minister, an independent regulator, I think, dealing with funeral services in my own private member's bill, the Burial and Cremation Regulation Bill 2011. However, the regulator I proposed would also have had a remit in the regulation of the operation of crematoria, and it was also proposed that the regulator would be independent in its functions, and of course it would be self-financing. I think it's laughable, Laskin Corla, when you hear Fianna Fáil talking about quangos, a government that set up, I think, dozens of totally unnecessary quangos, whereas in this area here we're talking about one of the most important elements of society and human existence, and the way we treat our citizens who passed away. It's absolutely exasperating, Minister, that the legal position when I proposed my bill in December 2011, when it was debated in this House in April 2012, is exactly the same now as was then. We still also have an absence of a specific regulatory framework clearly governing sustainability, planning, building and operation of cemeteries and crematoria in Ireland. Most people can't understand why there's still a dearth of regulation in the area. A number of organisations have raised their serious concerns about the gaps in the legislative framework. For example, the National Council on the Forum of the End of Life in Ireland produced a very interesting document in April 2011, Minister, entitled, and I quote, "The Funeral Industry in Ireland, the Case for Reform and Regulation." I think that made an unanswerable case indeed, that we should have a bill like Deputy Maloney's being brought through this House and implemented. Separately, of course, the Irish Hospice Foundation and the Irish Association of Funeral Directors have made recommendations concerning the Coroner's Bill. It's also shocking, Minister, that the Coroner's Bill, which was published in 2007, has still not been enacted. The recommendations made by all these organisations, of course, related also to the cremation certification process. And of course, Section 5 of the bill I originally brought through the House related to the specific issue and stipulated the conditions under which cremations were allowed, and specifically stated that cremation couldn't take place unless an application for cremation had been made to and approved by the relevant authorities, a new regulator. As the Minister said, of course, cremation is an increasingly popular form of funeral in Ireland. I think in 2012 the figures I had was it was heading for about 15%, I think, nationally, and your own figure there could be correct. I know the UK and the countries like Denmark is something like 75%, and then there's countries, of course, whose cremation maybe was part of their culture, such as Japan, where virtually everybody is cremated. But research in my office, carried out by my office from the period 2010 to 2012 showed grave concerns about the lack of a licensing and regulatory authority for cremation, including the care and maintenance of the columbarium memorials walls in graveyards. Treating our deceased citizens, Laskin Corla, with the dignity and respect they deserve is imperative, and where there's a failure in this regard, it reflects very poorly on our society. Today's debate, of course, is all the more timely in light of the publication of reports last week of the circumstances surrounding the burial of almost 800 babies in Tuam, County Galway, and the disgraceful manner in which these human remains were treated. And I listened very carefully, Laskin Corla, to your own very important contribution on this matter in the House yesterday. From the point of view of crematoria, of course, the Edinburgh baby ashes scandal recently also highlights the difficulties raised by the lack of regulations covering the disposal of human remains. For many decades, staff at the crematorium in question, I think in Edinburgh, buried ashes of dead babies in a garden of remembrance where they were swept up with the ashes of adults. And the recent report into this scandal raised concerns about a hands-off approach to the crematorium in question at Morton Hall in Edinburgh. But as recently of April, I think, of this year, Minister, I asked you if you had any plans to create a licensing regulatory authority for the establishment and operation of cemeteries and crematoria. And you informed me in responses to those parliamentary questions that you had no plans to create such a new authority. In fact, you said that the establishment and operation of such services and businesses are currently subject, where applicable, to the provisions of legislation dealing with planning and development, environmental protection and air pollution. But I think the whole thrust of Deputy Maloney's contribution and Deputy Dáil's contributions over the years clearly show, in fact, that we do need a regulatory framework in this area, whether or not, obviously, local authorities would be closely involved in the actual operation of it. The other major problem which was brought to my attention in 2011-2012 was the soaring cost of funerals, and my colleagues behind me again have also covered that extensively over the years and brought it to the public attention. Constituents, of course, have referred to the long list of costs for plot openings, interment fees, foundation fees, application fees, and a whole host of other charges, especially across the 4 Dublin counties. Funeral costs seem to range from over €4,000 to up to 10,000 and above. And I remember Deputy Dáil was referring in the last debate in this House to a funeral which cost something like 16,000, an incredible figure. In my own constituency, of course, I've noted over recent years the increasing popularity of using funeral directors from Fingal, North Fingal, from Meath, Louth, and even recently, Minister, the last few years from Armagh, from County Down, and so on. And that seems to be directly due to escalating costs in Dublin. On cost grounds and the licensing of funeral directors and embalmers, and actually the issue of embalming was one, and the training and the invigilation of embalming of remains was an issue that a lot of people were very concerned about when I was last trying to address this matter. It seemed clear then that a regulatory system, I think, is crucial for the planning, licensing and operation of graveyards, crematorium, and also, of course, for the undertaker funeral director industry. I mentioned the Association of Funeral Directors. Minister, I struck before that the great majority of funeral directors are actually not members of the association. My colleague, the former outstanding councillor Peter Coyle of Fingal County, he also highlighted over the years the deficiencies in the planning process for cemeteries, citing in particular incredibly bad drainage problems at Fingal Balgriffin Cemetery and in Dardistown. And Councillor Peter Coyle and myself, I remember one battle we had in relation to the planning situation was for somebody who wanted to have a graveyard and a crematorium just beside a nursing home to develop, if you like, out in an incredibly crass way, effectively. So, fortunately, Fingal County didn't accept that proposal, but it does seem to me that it shows again the necessity for regulation. So I very much welcome the contents of Deputy Maloney's bill, as well as establishing the Cemeteries Regulator in Section 1. It does deal with the key issue of the licensing of cemetery authorities in Section 2 and includes a number of important safeguards by proposing that cemeteries cannot operate with a valid licence. And another integral and well thought out feature of Deputy Maloney's bill is Section 2E, and it addresses ongoing issue highlighted by members of the Irish Monumental Firms Association, which colleagues have almost unanimously referred to in the House this morning in relation to difficulties posed by the operation of the Glasnevin Trust. Members of IMFA, they provide myself and other deputies with a briefing on their key concerns about what they maintain is an abuse of a dominant monopoly position by Glasnevin Trust in its operation of providing ancillary services to internments, particularly gravestones and monuments. I raised a specific issue as a competition issue, Minister, with your colleague, Minister Richard Broughan, and he referred the organisation to the Competition Authority. I understand that the IMFA have been informed by the Competition Authority. Unfortunately, there's nothing they can do about the situation, and legislative change led by yourself is required. Again, I've raised a specific issue with yourself on 30th of April last, and I've asked you if you had any plans to reform Dublin Cemeteries Committee 1970, and you told me, Minister, at the time, you said it's a private act and you have no role or function in relation to the same. But that does seem incredible. We're the legislature of the Republic, and surely it's our business to regulate this very important aspect of our culture. Section 3 of Deputy Maloney's bill seeks to get around the difficulty, of course, by making cemetery authorities managed by trust submit proposals to the High Court to amend the trust and ensure it operates in conformity with the Act. And that's also an excellent proposal in the bill. You did highlight some of the deficiencies. Actually, when deputies around the House are trying to bring forward bills, it's often easy, or not easy. We often find, in fact, the implementation structures, if you haven't been a minister, are sometimes hard to put them all together. So I don't think that would be a major failing in any way of this bill. So warmly I want to commend my colleague Deputy Maloney for his outstanding work. As I said again, it's very typical of his tremendous contribution to this House and to politics generally. When my own bill was discussed a few years ago, at the time time, Deputy Stanley and other TDs, and I think we heard the same refrain from the Fianna Fáil deputy this morning, that the regulation of cemeteries was best left to existing cemetery trusts and local authorities. But I don't think clearly the record shows that isn't the case. The treatment of people's remains after death, it is such a key measure of society's culture and respect for all our citizens. And like other aspects of Irish life, regulation of the sector in a small state like ours, it does need a national response. I mean, you've argued the opposite in relation to this, by the way, Minister, in relation to Irish water, haven't you? Even though the 4 Dublin counties and the Mid-Leinster region, you know, we did look after our own water supply pretty well over the years with limited support from government. We kept the water flowing. Now, we did the business. But the point is, you're saying, OK, it has to be national. Now, you could argue the same then in reverse. You know, the counties are operating now under Uisce Éireann, and they're delivering what you say is your vision for the water supply. So in a similar way, I think maybe in this area, I believe you should, well, I'm grateful for the fact that you have accepted the bill, that you are not opposing it, and I'd urge you then, Minister, to legislate.
Now, the Minister's entitled